Hi everyone, welcome to St George's Park. We are here at the Rangers training camp. We've had some access today to the camp, done a number of interviews, watched training, spoken to Russell Martin, have transfer information, so loads for you and I to get through, Chris Jack. Let's start with the facilities, which people can see behind us, and by all accounts, everyone we've spoken to have been very impressed about since coming down the road. Helps when you've got weather like you're in Spain, admittedly.
It has been somewhat warm and somewhat sunny today, but it's been nice. It's out of all of these places that I've been to over the years, it's probably the best facility. Rangers have been to Spain, they've been to Portugal. They also use facilities like this a lot. But this is certainly it's a really impressive place. Rangers are of course not the only team here. They're the only ones that I've seen training today, but you see a number of players and staff from other clubs kicking around. Sheffield Wednesday, ironically, being one of them, of course. But I think Rangers have certainly enjoyed their time here. They'll play a bounce game here tomorrow, and then back up the road, another couple of behind closed doors games, and then it's all systems go for a Champions League tie in less than a fortnight now.
Yeah, we had access to the whole training session today, which was great, and we'll get into some of the things we learned from that. But let's start with transfer news. People will be able to read on the website. They can watch on the YouTube channel too the latest regarding Gassama, which is a player you've reported on a lot this week, and also Robin Proper. Rangers have accepted an offer from FC20 for Robin Proper. It's been one of the sagas of the summer. Will he return to the club less than a year from when he made that initial move to Ibrox? But let's start with Gassama. Russell Martin says everything is done at Rangers' side, but Sheffield Wednesday's difficulties are holding things up. What does that mean?
Difficulties, a lot of them at Hillsborough, unfortunately. There's obviously a potential change of ownership there. There's players that have gone without wages for some time now. It's a club that's having a really difficult time of it. Rangers perhaps sensing a bit of an opportunity there, looking at can they pick up Gassama on a perhaps a cut price deal. He's certainly a player that Russell Martin likes. He spoke well about him and how excited he was to potentially bring him into the squad. Confirmation is not yet there. We don't yet have that picture with the scarf and the shirt, an official confirmation, but everything is pointing to him becoming a Rangers player. The fact that the manager's happy to talk about it says quite a lot. So hopefully sooner rather than later we'll have that official confirmation on that one.
Yeah, and he's been part of the squad at points here at St George's Park. So a bit of a strange transfer situation in many ways, but the expectation is that he will be a Rangers player soon. And Martin spoke about him being a point of difference, is a phrase he used. He's effectively said the squad's been a bit unbalanced for the type of football that he wants to play, and Gassama will give him a wide option. One player that's going out the door, confirmation of that, should Robin Proper agree to go back to FC20, you'd imagine that personal terms won't be difficult for a player who captains the club prior to joining Rangers. He is one of three centre-backs who've not travelled with the squad. We said yesterday that Proper hadn't travelled on our video. Ben Davies, Clinton Enciala, Jose Cifuentes and Leon King, so four centre-backs aren't here. Expectation is that move will be completed, and Proper, a player who isn't going to play here at Rangers this season, will get that move back to his former club.
It's no surprise that he's being allowed to move on. I think the 45 minutes that we saw against Bruges summed up the way that Russell Martin wants to play, the way that Russell Martin does play. Those two things are not compatible. He's not going to get any minutes here at all. Rangers have obviously made moves to strengthen at centre half so far. They've had to do that. They've had to almost get built from the back because the options are just not there. Proper, Davies, Enciala, King, clearly ones that the manager doesn't fancy. I think, as we said on the show yesterday, getting these guys out could be easier said than done. Proper looked like one of the easier ones to get done. Going back to his former club, it shouldn't be a problem in terms of getting that one boxed off now. So he will become an FC20 player again sooner rather than later.
In terms of other news from our conversation with Martin, there'll be other interviews to follow from today's day with the media at the training centre. Reference why Rangers are going back into the English market quite extensively. Effectively confirmed that those players who haven't travelled are not going to be part of things, and Rangers have already got 25 players who've travelled down to St George's Park, so it's a squad that needs to be cut. Just on the returning to the English market, I know Johnny and Derek spoke about it on the morning briefing, so Johnny will be delighted that his point is getting confirmed, but Martin said that, in his opinion, the successful teams that Rangers have had in the past have had a British core British identity. He did point to examples like Nasser Jiga, who he hasn't played much in England. He's coming from the English market, but he's played more extensively in Serbia. What did you make of what Martin said about the transfer window and where he sees Rangers are at the moment? Obviously, 12 or 11 days away from Panathinaikos.
I know it's become quite a bit of a talking point over the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
I don't really buy into the kind of full outrage about the whole thing, to be honest. Just because Rangers have been stung, if you like, and they've made some bad signings from England, doesn't mean to say that you can't go back down that road again. I think the cultural aspect that the manager referenced in that interview, I think is a big part of it. They don't have time to allow guys to settle in. They don't have that leeway this summer. Yeah. So you look at someone like Igaman last summer coming in, took him a few weeks. Now when he did get into the team and he finally exploded onto the scene, great player, did very well. Rangers don't have that time. I think Shefty would have been given more time last season if it hadn't been for the Ridvan injury situation and other situations. But they can't afford to have this Panathinaikos game coming up in less than a fortnight now. So I think it's understandable why the manager's going for players who know the culture of British football, and also players that he knows. He perhaps knows their character. He's played either with them or against them. So I don't think it's a massive surprise that he's going down that road. But he did say, don't rule out players from other areas coming in. It's not going to be a case of we're only going to go Championship, League One to rebuild the squad. In time, as the window unfolds, I think you will see players from other markets coming in as well.
Yeah, it leads us on nicely to training today, because as you say, Martin referenced that. I think the phrase he used was it has to be a balance because you have to win here, so there has to be that. There's no point in signing 5 or 6 development players and having a terrible August and not getting through in the qualifiers, because you'll be done before you've really started. A few of those players who weren't involved today, and then we'll get into what we learned from training. Hamza Gaman and Cyril Dessers both doing individual work alongside Ross McCausland and Robbie Fraser. Ridvan Yilmaz wasn't part of the session, but we believe he has travelled down. Those 2 strikers remain at the club at the moment. Martin's obviously spoken about it this week. 2 different situations. One, still an expectation. I think that Igaman could well go this window, probably will go this window, but that offer from Lille hasn't arrived. Cyril Dessers known as paid Rangers asking fee, and at the moment, maybe Danilo's got a chance of playing in that Panathinaikos game, because he's the only striker apart from Josh Gentles, who Martin seems to like because he keeps referencing and speaking about him, but he's the only senior striker who's done a full pre-season, and that's quite different from his previous 2 summers where he's not had a Rangers pre-season at all, because he was injured he was kind of involved last year, wasn't he? He was coming back from a knee injury.
Yeah. So he was part of the squad that went out to Holland last year, but his minutes and his load was being very, very carefully managed at that time. Obviously, I had to be really careful with him at that time. It's a real opportunity for him. He's not the guy that I think a lot of the fans, they would say, go and come in against Panathinaikos, but if he's the guy that's put in the minutes, he's the guy that's put in the work. And I think from what we saw in the session this morning, the expectation and the way that Russell Martin wants the side to set up, he's got demands on every single player in this side, every area of this side. There was instructions to Danilo about his movement and his press and where he wants him to be. If Igaman and Dessers haven't done that work, if they've not been through that process, it becomes very difficult just to say, well, we'll just go and throw him in. You can't just go and throw someone in who's not been part of the overall build-up. So as it stands, unless Cyril and Igaman can get through a lot of work over the next week or so, I think Danilo's got a fair chance of starting in that first leg at Ibrox.
Yeah, training. I'm going to pull you in slightly because you're drifting off to the west wing of St George's Park there. What did you learn? What did you take away? We're watching it for 90 minutes. Real rare opportunity to sit and watch. Often a manager might allow the media 15-20 minutes access, basically a few rondos and some running. We're going to have a full piece on the website later, basically detailing what happened, what we heard Martin speaking about, what type of drills they were doing, what we can maybe take away from that, because loads of fascinating detail, including a lot of set piece work. But what did you take away from it, Chris?
Took away the fact that it was very hot while we were watching it, and I think you can see the workload that the manager's putting into these players. As you say, it's interesting that he allowed us that access, and fair play to him, and thank you to him for that. You get managers that will, as you say, you'll get the first 10-15 minutes, you watch the players run up and down, and that's your training access, and you don't really learn anything. There was a lot to take away from that session in terms of the the way that he actually has involved himself in the session. I saw a couple of the drills early on. He's got the yellow bib on and he was getting himself very involved. I don't think it's just in case he's short of a centre half, but he clearly enjoys still getting involved. I thought the coaching staff, again, very vocal. I think you can tell that, and very, very involved. And the set piece work, I think that's something a lot of the fans will be quite encouraged by, because we spoke a lot over the course of last season about Rangers set pieces at both ends of the park, not carrying enough threat in an attacking sense, not being dominant enough in a defensive sense. You look at the profile of this squad, you look at some of the players that have been brought into this squad. Rangers should be a very different animal at both ends of the pitch in a set piece sense, and they did put in a lot of drills, a lot of resets, making sure players were in the right position for the deliveries in coming in, and I'm sure that's something that will continue. There was a game here over the weekend as well, so interesting to get that much access.
Yeah, as mentioned, I'll have more insight in the Rangers review later, but a few things that stood out to me. One was the balance of the sessions here. A lot of small-sided work. A lot of the goalkeepers were involved in the passing rondos at the start. Martin stopped it a lot when, and he's encouraging people to be intense and win the ball back quickly, but then would use phrases a lot about not rushing, remaining in the right position. Quite a few times that you'd see a player and maybe play a ball down the line quickly instead of building up through the middle of the pitch. Or there's one moment where Nadim Bahrami, who's impressing by all accounts, tried to play a pass first time when Rangers were working from a set up from a throw-in, which is what we want to see, and has not been worked. The small details that haven't been worked on nearly enough in recent years. But he said to him, "You're good enough. Take it on your chest. Keep the ball. You're good enough to do that instead of rushing it." There was individual work with Xander Hutton at the end, where he was taking him through with a few of his different coaches. He was taking him through his movement as a right back when his right centre back gets the ball. So he was saying, "You've got to wait until I'm pressured. You've got to try and bait your man in. If he's going narrow, you're going to go behind him. Make sure that sometimes you're not in his line of vision, so he's watching the ball." Really, really interesting stuff. And then, as you say, a lot of work on set pieces and transitions from set pieces. So Mike Williamson is going to be the coach who's in charge of set pieces, but also transitions too, which is an interesting title. And effectively, I think that what that means is the game doesn't stop when a set piece breaks down. How do you defend it? How do you maybe capitalise the other end when you're defending one? So really unique to see that to be given that level of insight. And it looks like I know, how much can you really tell? But again, Martin speaking to the press later in the day was referencing that voices are becoming a bit louder, and the intensity that he wants and the vocalness in the group that perhaps hasn't always been that vocal is starting to improve. And you probably felt that too, didn't you?
I think you could definitely see that. I know a number of fans have watched the training videos over the last few days, and I think you will see a real progression in this side as these sessions unfold. Not just from the work that they do tactically and how the players involve or improve themselves. That leadership is a big part of this squad. It's a big part of this club. I think Emerson Martin's a really vocal presence on the training ground. They're talking players through, talking areas of the team through each of the various drills. Eventually, he'll want his players to do that for himself. I thought, in the ones that we saw, I thought Liam Kelly was a really big presence. You could always hear him shouting, and he was demanding things of his centre halves. There's not that many guys in the squad that you really hear on a regular basis, and I think that's something that the manager is certainly looking to try and instill in a bit more of them. Be vocal. Communication is such a big part, and when the drills are as complicated in some scenarios as that, communication is key. You need to know. You need to have that sixth sense of where your teammate is going to be. You also need to be able to communicate and to be able to react on these things. And a quiet team is not going to be a successful team.
Like that. Yeah, and you had a lot of tactical work. So Martin was really involved in the session, leading a lot of it. You had Matt Gill as assistant, did a lot of the warm-ups, and then Williamson did a lot of the set pieces. But when they were doing the tactical walkthrough stuff, it was Martin who was basically really hands-on coaching, explaining the structure. And this is one of the specifications he's spoken about, where it's not that Rangers aren't going to play one formation and just be really rigid. They've got a core idea that they want to, dominate the ball and dominate off the ball, and everything else will go from there. So there was moments, for example, where they're building up from a goal kick and someone goes long too early and he stops it. as you say with Danilo, he was referencing everything has to be attached. So when the number 6 drops, you need to keep the distance the same. How does that create space for other players? It's a far cry from Rangers' tactical setup last season, and I think it should give them. You've not been able to identify Rangers by their style of playing so long. You know, you could put them in a different colour shirt and you wouldn't know it was them. In Europe, I think that sometimes helps because it was spontaneous, they were a fit team, and the space was there for them to make decisions. But when they got the ball domestically, there was a discomfort. And watching that today gave me a bit more insight into how that's potentially going to change. So yeah, we'll have more on the website later about it. I don't know if I enjoyed it more than you, but it was a great 90 minutes for me.
Are we going to reference your keep uppy skills? Or are we just going to keep that? Just to keep that.
If you're not part of the Rangers Review WhatsApp channel, I didn't even know Chris was recording me, but I was trying to impress at the sidelines and kept the ball up for probably about 1 second after the camera went off me. But
if the manager's looking for another body for the game tomorrow, we're in town until about 20 past 10 tomorrow morning before the train goes, so he's got until 10 o'clock to get on the phone to you. I could yet be heading up the road myself tomorrow. You could be living the boyhood dream.
Yeah, if he's looking for a ponderously slow centre back who's not great in the air, then I am his man.
I think I've got a couple of them already.
Anything else from today that stood out to you?
Just a early heads up for the 2 player interviews that we've got coming up with Fernandes and Asgard. I thought both spoke really well as they
spoke very well as band on the Rangers.
Spoke very well. I know it's somewhat of a cliche, but I gave you a bit of technical chat yesterday when I mentioned overloads. So I think I can get away with a cliche now and again. I thought both of them came across well. 2 nice guys. The manager's clearly got big hopes for them. They won't be the last new recruits. There's going to be many more to come in this squad because it's still a squad that needs more. But alongside those interviews, of course, we're always trying to bring the latest transfer news. So my usual plug just to keep across our socials, website, YouTube, and everything else, every other channel that we're on at present.
Yeah, absolutely. And a shout out to. Who was it we met? What was the guy's name we just met in there? It was a really nice guy. Justin, was it?
Yes. No? I think so. Not actually met a couple of Rangers fans here. As happens almost everywhere we go these days, we bump into Rangers fans and people who are a fan of the show. So it's always nice to get that feedback and our people appreciate our work and appreciate our efforts.
I don't know if it was Justin, but he's a great guy. I made a long chat with him, so apologies. But too many names today. We're going to leave it there. We're going to get back into Burton, but appreciate you watching as ever. Loads more to come across the YouTube and website over the weekend. Please subscribe for free on YouTube if you've not done so already, and we will speak to you soon. Bye for now.